Can you do the whiteboard for a romance novel? I think I can, and here's why. I actually have an award here from Harlequin for my 50th book with them. 5-0. Yes, I've written a lot of books. I've written for Berkeley, Kensington, Hachette. I've also self-published, so I've done a romance or two. I haven't broken down romances, never mind any genre, a whole lot on this channel. Because you know what? All writing is structured the same. They say, is there a formula? Well, there is a structure that is the same for every single book. It's kind of like how you build a house. They all have to have a foundation or they'll sink into the ground. They all have to have a roof or you will drown in the rain. So the structure is there for every book, but how you carry it out differs from genre to genre. So let's talk about breaking down the plot, working in the subplots, and figuring out how the hell you work the romance in with everything else with a romance novel on the trusty dusty whiteboard. Now, romance plots, and I'm just going to draw a heart because that at least I can handle. We all know I'm not much of a drawer. You have seen my shark, my dinosaur, all bad. In a romance, you have 3 plots going on. I'm going to say hero and heroine, but feel free to write a romance novel that's hero, hero, heroine, heroine. And if you do a polyamorous book, then you're going to have one more plot to deal with. So you have a hero and you have a heroine. And yes, I'm being sexist in my colors, but that way you can also see the individual plots. And then you have the romance. Those are the 3 plots that make up any romance novel, whether it's happily ever after, happy for now, whichever. You have 3 plots going. So there's a lot more to juggle, but that's okay because that's what makes it a romance. The number one thing you have to remember when you write a romance novel is that love is never, ever, 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 ever the goal for either of the main characters. Never. Now you're like, wait, this is a romance novel. The whole thing's about love. What are you talking about? Here's the thing. If you have that friend that's just like, oh my God, I just want to fall in love. I just want to meet Mr. Right and fall in love and live happily ever after with him. You'd be like, oh, honey, let's get you a job, find a career, maybe live on your own for 5 minutes first. Don't put your whole life into another person's hands. We can all desire love, but making it your main and only goal is a huge red flag, just saying. I'm not going to be your therapist here, but I will tell you that you need to be independent before you fall in love, because that way you are never reliant on the other person and you have your own life. Whole other side story. If you ever see me in person, grab me for a glass of wine and I will share it with you. So you've heard me talk before in the other plot video, I'll link it right up here, about GMC. That is goal, motivation, and conflict. Every single main character in your book has an external goal, motivation, and conflict. That means something that they want to accomplish that has absolutely nothing to do with falling in love. Even if you look at, say, a Regency romance where the hero has to get married in order to get his inheritance, that's not about falling in love. That's about finding a wife, which is a totally different thing than having a main goal of falling in love. External means physical, tangible. You can hold it, you can touch it, you can see it, those kinds of things. It's less about emotion and more about an actual physical goal. Let me give you an example. All Summer Long, which is my self-published reissue of, I want to say, The Sweetheart Rules. I forget sometimes the original titles of these books, which I published with Berkeley. The Sweetheart Rules is the second book in the Rescue Bay series. And in this one, Mike Stark is a Coast Guard lieutenant who is back in Rescue Bay because his ex-wife has dumped his kids with him for 30 days. So his goal is to survive the 30 days with the kids and then go back to his normal life, which is being in the Coast Guard. He doesn't want to stay and put down roots because he's just not that kind of guy. His motivation is that he has the kids, they were literally dumped on his doorstep. So he kind of doesn't have a choice. He also needs a reset with them. That's supposed to be a semicolon if you're confused. He's not been the most present dad. He's not a bad person. He's just not a good dad. And he acknowledges that early on in the book. The conflict is, doesn't know what he's doing. He literally has no idea how to be a dad. He's lost. He doesn't know how to take care of temper tantrums. He doesn't know how to braid hair. He doesn't know how to do any of the things that you need to do as the dad of 2 girls. It's not a very high stakes life or death plot. But if you think about it, bonding with your kids is pretty life or death. It is pretty important. Then there's the heroine. She's in the middle of a custody battle with her teenager and her ex-husband. And she also has a veterinary practice that she needs to focus on. because if she doesn't, then she doesn't have the steady income that she needs to go through her custody battle with her ex-husband. Her motivation is pretty clear. She wants to be with her son, and she wants to rescue animals. And so they're good motivations. We kind of already like her, right? Her conflict is she is struggling to do it all. Diane, the heroine, is really struggling with that. That's the two external plots that are going on when the hero and heroine run into each other. The part that kicks off the romance is the meet cute. It should happen within the first 7 to 10 pages of your romance novel. I have definitely read books where it doesn't, but they need to at least be aware of each other within the first 7 to 10 pages. Because here's the thing, the reader bought the book to read a romance, not to read everything else. So if you don't have them meet for like 40 pages, the reader feels ripped off. They want to see the hero and heroine together. This is the expectation of the reader, rightly so, because you marketed the book as a romance. So you've got to meet the reader expectation. They do not have to fall in love. The reader is the only one that needs to be able to see the possibility of love. Remember, the reason they do not have to fall in love at the meet cute is because the goal is never, ever, ever, ever just to find love. Ever. Diane and Mike have lives completely going on already. Everything that happens in a book happens in the middle of their lives. When the kid is kidnapped in a mystery novel, it's in the middle of a day-to-day life for the person that's going to go search for them. Everything that happens in a book is in media res, which means in the middle of your life. They have existing lives going on when they meet. Now, Diane and Mike have a little history. They had a one-night stand like months before, and he came in, loved her, and left her. So when they run into each other in chapter 1, she's none too happy to see him because he just kind of snuck out. And that's not good. We've already seen him struggling with the kids. And if you want me to go into in-depth about how to show little kids in a book in a really effective way, I can absolutely do that and break down that scene with his kids. So she runs into the one-night stand that she thought would be a little something more, and she's not happy with him. That's their meet cute in the aisle of a Walmart in the middle of Mike's daughter throwing a temper tantrum. So there's that moment where the reader's like, okay, so there's some attraction there. But what did that sentence end with? It ended with conflict. But, and that's what conflict is. It's all the buts. And there should be a lot of them because you've got 85, 90,000 words to keep them apart. Once they fall in love, the book is basically over because the reader has gotten what they came for. You've met the reader expectation, they move on. So all these buts are all about why they can't be together. But he's only here for 30 days. But she's in the middle of a custody battle. But she just wants to concentrate on her son. But he's got these kids. Like there's so many buts in between them. Then, and this is what makes a romance novel an emotional book, you have the other plots. I've said it in a million videos. The internal plot is the emotional plot. The emotional plot is what makes the readers love your book. They're not here to see how Mike works out with his kids for 30 days. They're here to see if Mike gets over his emotional crap, falls in love with Diane because she's clearly perfect for him, even though he just said she wasn't. And then the meet cute becomes a happily ever after, or happily for now, or whatever you choose to end your romance with. Mike's internal comes out in chapter 1, and it's actually kind of sweet. He doesn't feel worthy because he's been a crappy dad and a kind of crappy friend, and he's concentrated solely on his career in the military and has just kind of abandoned the people that matter most in his life. He even says it on page 12, because truth be told, it was his damn fault they lived this way, his kids. And if he'd been the kind of man and father he should have been from day one, then none of this would have happened. Yet another chalk mark in the failure column. So what does he do every time he feels like a failure? He runs and cuts bait. And what is the conflict in that? If you run away from the people that you are failing, and you run away when you don't feel worthy of love, how do you ever get over it? That's the conflict that creates this vicious cycle that goes back and forth with him. If every time he runs, he only makes this worse. Because if you run away from the people that care about you, they kind of get mad. And then you don't feel worthy of love, and then you have failed them, and then it's just over and over and over again, which is how we all end up in therapy. That is going to create a lot of buts over here. But I'm a crappy dad, but I was a crappy first husband, but I'm a crappy friend. I should not be in love with you. And here he even says it in chapter 1, so that the reader knows right away why these two can't be together. From the minute he met Diana, it had been too easy, too quick to pretend he was a stay-in-place, dinners at the family table kind of guy. She had a way of wrapping him in that world, like the mythological sirens that made sailors abandon their ships and he'd forget reality for a little while. He sucks at relationships. He acknowledges it. And yet, the way that is written, you can hear, even though he doesn't say it, that tiny sense of longing for exactly what Diane has to offer. That creates more conflict. He wants what he can't have because he's going to run and he's going to screw it up. That's what keeps that push-pull in a romance. When the character wants what they can't have, the heroine's internal goal motivation conflict is pretty clear in the first chapter too. Doesn't depend on anyone but herself. Because what's happened? She's been let down repeatedly. So she becomes an island unto herself. And I want you to remember I said that because I'll come back to that in a second. I mean, Mike proved the whole point, right? When he left her the note and walked away in the middle of the night. What's the conflict with that? Not connecting equals not being there. The whole thing you want to do with your plot, and this is the secret you want to remember, is you want to make this be in direct opposition to that. Because when this is in direct opposition to that, you create even more conflict. And conflict is what makes the book tense. It's what makes the reader keep turning the pages. It's what makes the reader say, is this going to work out? With Mike, failing them is not possible. And running is not possible either. All he wants to do is bail. And he can't bail because he has the kids for 30 days and he has to learn how to be a dad, but he doesn't know how. And he's constantly screwing up. He is also an island of his own self. Because when you run, what do? You go off all by yourself. What the plot with the kids does is it forces them to open up, both her son and his kids. For him to succeed here, he has to open up. He has to stop being an island. He has to become involved and vulnerable and authentic. And for her to get here and get close to her teenage son, she also has to do the same thing. With the kids in the mix and them interacting because of the kids, they become authentic and vulnerable with each other. If you guys want me to show you how to write kids really realistically in a book, let me know. A lot of what I write is not intentional at the time. It just happens out of instinct and out of reading a lot and writing a lot. But that mama cat is very much like this person right here, who's just a little wary, doesn't depend, doesn't trust, is an island unto herself. That is a moment of heart and hope. It's a moment of hope for Mike with his kids. It's a moment of hope with the romance because you're like, look at that softie. I love him. I want her to fall in love with him. But conflict. We're only a third of the way through the book. She can't fall in love with him quite yet. Here we end the scene with more of the but, because it's only a third of the way through the book. They can't fall in love yet. And what are we right back to? Exactly this. So the romance is continually complicating these, and these are continually complicating themselves, and complications are conflict, and conflict is what keeps the tension going. Is this easy? No, of course not. I struggle with it just like you guys do. It is not easy. But here's the thing. When you put all of this together and you have one complicate the other, you've created a really tightly woven book that keeps the reader in suspense about whether this will work out or not. There are as many conflict issues as you can possibly fit in the book, but they must be true to the characters, to what's going on, to what is bothering them inside here. That's how a book works. That's how a romance novel works. That's how every book works. This is the structure of every single book. This is the genre. And the genre interweaves with everything else. If you had suspense, that would be the same thing. It would weave in with everything else. Let me know in the comments. what else you're struggling with. Do you want me to talk about kids? Do you want me to talk more about romance novels? Do you like the whiteboard? I think you do, because I think I have more energy. When I'm just sitting at the desk, I have the same energy as I would if I was speaking in person, like on a stage, which I will be doing, by the way, in March in Pennsylvania. So keep an eye out for that information. And you can come to that conference and see me deliver a whole bunch of workshops and also do one-on-ones with your plot. I will put that information on the community page as soon as I have it, which should be really soon. I'm also teaching online for AWC in November, and that information will also be on my community page. So just keep an eye out for that. And I would be remiss if I forgot to tell you to buy Writing Compelling Fiction, both the workbook and the book itself, because this was designed to help you figure out this, like what's going on inside this person. Don't forget to share, because other writers need this information. I wish I had had it when I first started, because it would have made a huge difference in how well I wrote a book. And I will see you on the other side of the page.